welcome back to the kitchen. Welcome back to Full Day of Eating. We're just gonna jump right into things here with meal number one. This isn't gonna be a super in-depth full day of eating today. What I mainly wanna focus on is I kinda wanna focus on how I transition from peak off-season or a peak bulking diet to the initial cutting phase. In the first episode of the series, I had mentioned that I made a 1,500 calorie decrease from my peak off-season calories to where I'm at now. And basically what I want to do is I kind of want to illustrate to you guys how I did that. So we're gonna talk about each meal and compare what the meal is now compared to what it was at the peak of my off season. So breakfast, meal number one, we have 2 eggs that are cooked in 5 grams of butter. And then I have 130 grams of turkey sausage that I make into a patty. And then I split that patty in half. And then 2 English muffins with 1 piece of cheese. And then this is, if you can see, this is about 15 grams of ketchup. And then this is an apple. This one is about 130 grams of apple. In the peak off season, I would have 2 pieces of cheese with this meal. So instead of just 1, there would be 2. I would have a cup of apple juice, which was about 30 grams of carbs. And then I would have way more ketchup than this. What I would usually do is I would eat the apple and then I would fill this bowl with about 50 grams of ketchup, and then I would actually dip my sandwiches in the ketchup there. But now that I'm kind of dieting, not only did I take away the apple juice and then 1 piece of the cheese, but I've also made a pretty noticeable pull with the ketchup. I'm basically only using enough ketchup now to make the sandwiches taste good and kind of edible, but I don't need so much to where I'm using the sandwiches as like a ketchup shovel. And then the normal health sups that I normally would take here, omega-3 fish oil, BCM 95 curcumin, vitamin D3, and vitamin K2. And that's pretty much all that I'm taking right now. 10 grams of fiber powder, and then we'll get this in. This will be meal number one, and then we'll meet up with you guys back here for the second meal. Meal number 2, this is my pre-training meal. Today is actually not a training day for me, but I eat my meals on a rest day in the same order that I eat them on a training day anyways. So that's just what I'm going to show you guys. My 5 meals that I have every day are the same, whether it's a training day or a rest day. I do have 250 calories more on a training day, and that comes from my intra workout, which I'll show after this. But the actual 5 food meals that I have every day are the exact same, whether it's a training day or a rest day. So this is always meal 2 on a training day. This is also the pre-training meal. This is raw measurement for everything. So this is about 8 ounces of chicken, 50 grams of rice. I have about 9 grams of Parmesan cheese seasoning that I put on this. I do track that because it does have calories. And then I have 30 grams of buffalo sauce on here, the Frank's Red Hot buffalo sauce. And then I have 100 grams of fruit. This is something that I'm doing a little bit differently, is I'm using berry medley. I was previously buying bags of strawberries, blueberries, raspberries, and then, I was having 150 grams of strawberries with 1 meal and 150 grams of blueberries with 1 meal. But it's actually cheaper for me in the long run to buy the mixed medley, berry medley, which has all of those fruits in there anyways, plus blackberries. So it gives me even more variety with my fruit and more variety with my micronutrients and everything, and it's cheaper. So I'm doing 100 grams of berry medley in here. In the off season, I would have 90 grams of rice, and I now have 50, so the rice has almost been cut in half. I was having 60 grams of buffalo sauce, and I now have 30, so that has also been cut in half. I was having 120 grams of bone broth on top of the meal. When my meat and rice meals get really big, I like to use like a broth or a chicken stock or something just to kind of make the meal a little bit more wet and moist, and it's a little bit easier to eat in larger quantities. But when the meals are small, I can get them down with no problem. So I took the bone broth out of there, and then I was having 150 grams of fruit at the peak off season, and now I'm having 100. So basically everything changed other than the direct protein source. The rice basically got cut in half, the fruit got cut by a third, the condiment got cut by half, and then the bone broth is just not necessary when the meal is this size. The next feeding that I would have, I don't know if you would really call this a meal, but I guess you could, because it's got calories and protein and everything. But the next feeding that I would have on a training day would be my intra-workout nutrition, which would be these two supplements here. This is a 1.5 liter bottle. This is about 1,500 milliliters of water, and in this I have 50 grams of Gatorade powder, and this is the carb source that I will drink during training. And I will start sipping this as I'm driving to the gym, and then my goal is to have it finished by the time I get to the last exercise. Sometimes I don't have it all finished, and then I'll just drink the rest of it on the way home. But the goal is to have it in by the end of the session. And then in this bottle, I have 12 grams of EAAs. Right now I'm using the PrimaForce EAAs, Rocket Pop flavor. No affiliation with that company. They just make good products at a really good price. So this is what I've been using. And I put the powder just in this shaker here with no fluid. And basically the way that I use these is to bridge the gap between my pre and post-workout meals. So I have talked about this before, but I usually have a pretty long gap between my pre-workout meal and my post-workout meal. I eat my pre-workout meal, and I usually let that digest anywhere between an hour to an hour and a half before I even leave to go to the gym. And then I'm usually not in a huge rush when I get home to get my pre-workout or my post-workout meal in. I usually like to come home and take a shower and then have that. So a full body training session in between there. So I'm usually going maybe 5 hours between pre-workout and post-workout meal. You know, I may finish my pre-workout meal around 1 o'clock, and I may not start having my post-workout meal until about 6. And so what I will do there is I'll kind of bridge that gap. You know, the middle of that 5-hour gap would be about 3:30, which usually is taking place as I'm getting into like the second or third exercise of my training session. And what I will do is when it, you know, hits 3:30, is I'll just take my bottle of carbs and I'll pour that in here. I'll probably only put about 8 ounces of water or 8 ounces of Gatorade in here, about 250 milliliters, just enough for me to shake this up, slam it all down in one go, and then the rest of the workout get back to sipping on the carbs. This is unchanged from my off season. I was having some clear whey protein during the off season, but I just don't think that that is necessary, honestly. You know, I have a very high protein intake as it is. I don't think beefing up the protein amount of the intra workout was really necessary. And clear whey is unnecessarily expensive, so that was just another thing that I was buying that I don't really have to be buying. I'm eating complete proteins in all of my meals throughout the day at relatively even spaced out intervals. And I'm hitting more than an adequate amount of total protein for the day. So my body is always going to have amino acids kind of floating throughout the bloodstream. So I didn't think that having a complete protein on top of the EAAs was, one, cost effective, or two, really giving me any benefit. So that may change in the near future. I may decide that I want to go back to having Clear Whey intra-workout, but right now just EAAs only is noticeably cheaper and is doing just fine for me. The next meal is meal number 3, and this is a liquid meal. On a training day, this is the post-workout meal, and I'm usually not hungry at all when I get home from the gym, so I just want something that I can blend and I can drink. And then usually on a rest day, I'm also usually not in the mood to sit down and eat it. I usually just want to do something I can drink so that I can get going with my day. Usually about this point in the day, I'm kind of finishing up with check-ins on a rest day, and I'm kind of planning out some content and stuff like that for the following days. So I like a liquid meal here. This is like a personal blender cup, and I have everything inside here. So this meal is 1 scoop, 1 serving of whey protein. I use Dymatize ISO 100. It's a very reputable protein powder, and it's one of the only ones that I can take that doesn't cause me any digestive issues. I have 50 grams of cereal with this, a rice-based cereal. We'll talk about that in a second. I have 100 grams of the mixed berry medley that I had with the chicken meal, 100 grams of spinach. I put spinach in here because it's a micronutrient powerhouse, and when you blend it and drink it, you can't even taste it. I have 10 grams of creatine, which doesn't have any calories, but I figured I would mention that anyways. And then the liquid that I use when I blend this up is I use 2 cups or 480 milliliters of fat-free milk. In the off season, I was having 90 grams of cereal instead of 50, so very similar to the chicken meal. The cereal has basically been cut in half. I was having 150 grams of fruit, and I'm now having 100. And then I was also having 20 grams of honey on top of this, which I have completely removed. On a rest day, the cereal that I choose is going to be just plain Rice Krispies cereal here. This is off-brand Walmart version, but this is what I will use on a rest day. And then on a training day, I'll use something that has a little bit more sugar added into it. At the moment, I'm using the off-brand of Fruity Pebbles. When you compare the calories and everything, 50 grams of this and 50 grams of this are the exact same calories. The main difference between the two is going to be a small amount of fat. The Cocoa Pebbles, Fruity Pebbles, any of these like sugary rice cereals are going to have a little bit of oil added into them, whereas the plain Rice Krispies does not. But the main difference other than that is going to be the amount of added refined sugars that are added into this. On regular Rice Krispies, for every 36 grams of carbs, you're getting 3 grams of added sugar. And then for the Fruity Pebbles, for every 36 grams of carbs, you're getting almost 20 grams of added sugar. So obviously the Fruity Pebbles are going to have a higher sugar content. But on a training day, I'm actually fine with having some refined, high glycemic, high insulinemic carbohydrates post-training. One, there could be an argument there that they could spike insulin more and be more anabolic. I honestly don't think that really is going to make a noticeable difference for most people unless you're using exogenous insulin on top of that. But also just kind of purely for dietary adherence, it is nice to have some sugar and some things that kind of taste sweet. And I've found pretty good success with a lot of clients and with myself having something a little bit more fun in the diet post-training. But as I mentioned earlier, I would never have these on a rest day. Too many grams of added refined sugar and too much of a blood sugar spike and insulin spike. I would not want this or recommend this on a training day. I would only have this post-workout. On a rest day, I have plain Rice Krispies cereal, which is actually incredibly clean. There's only like 3 ingredients that are in Rice Krispies cereal: rice, sugar, and as we talked about before, there's very little sugar in here, only 3 grams of sugar for every 36 grams of carbs. Corn syrup and salt. Those are the only 4 ingredients that are in this. So it digests perfectly like white rice, because it is white rice that's just puffed up and a little bit of salt and a little bit of sugar added into it. So this is what I'm having on a rest day today, but on a training day, I would have something a little bit more fun. Okay, meal number 4. This is the post workout meal on a training day. Very similar to the chicken and rice meal that I had earlier, but this is beef and rice. So I've got about 8 ounces of raw weight beef, 50 grams of rice, 100 grams of salsa, and then I have 100 grams of pineapple with this meal. In the off season, I was having 90 grams of rice and I'm now having 50. I was having 120 grams of bone broth, again, same as the chicken meal, that is gone. And then I was having 150 grams of pineapple, which is now 100. That is pretty much it for this meal. Again, the rice cut in half. I could maybe use a little bit less salsa because the meal is a little smaller, but I really like salsa, and my mom makes salsa, so I enjoy using that, and I'm definitely never at a shortage of having salsa. So for now, the salsa's still at 100 grams. Salsa's pretty low calorie anyways, but I could technically have less of that as we get a little further deeper into the diet. But for now, this is holding me over pretty good. This is the second to last meal of the day, and then we'll have one more before we go to bed. All right, guys, what up? It's time for meal number 5. And then we can finally get to bed. This is pretty standard issue if you've been following the channel for a while. My final meal is 450 grams of plain, non-fat Greek yogurt. I sweeten that with 25 grams of unsweetened baking cocoa, and then I add 5 grams of stevia to sweeten that. And then I have 100 grams of that mixed berry medley that is mixed in here. In the off season, I had 150 grams of fruit. That's a pretty common theme that you guys have seen across every meal so far today. I've gone from 150 grams of fruit per meal to 100. I was also having a cup of chocolate milk with this meal, and that was 2% chocolate milk, so it had a little bit more calories in it. And then I was also having a chocolate chip bagel, and that was anywhere between 250 to 300 calories depending on what it weighed out to be. Sometimes instead of having the bagel, I would have 250 to 300 calories worth of granola or peanut butter or something like that, but it was 8.5 out of 9 out of 10 times it was the bagel. So that is gone, the chocolate milk is gone, and the fruit has been reduced. So we're only doing the protein, the yogurt, and a little bit of fruit before bed. I'm gonna put 2 sets of macros up here, one for the training day and one for the rest day. As I said a little earlier, there's a 250 calorie difference between the training days and the rest days. And that 250 calories is the intra-workout Gatorade and EAAs. But otherwise, all of the meals that I have each day are the exact same. So I hope you guys have enjoyed following along with this updated full day of eating and just kind of hearing how I change my diet, kind of going from the peak off season to the beginning of the cutting phase. So I'm going to go ahead and get this in and then get to bed. We've got a big training day tomorrow. Going to do some pendulum squats and a bunch of other things. As always, if you guys have any questions or are interested in coaching or anything, leave the questions as a comment. I've got my coaching links and everything in the description below. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. And as always, guys, take care of yourselves and train hard.